Hello, I'm Barbara Sills Nevergold, co-founder of the Uncrowned Queens Institute. Welcome to They've Got Stories to Tell, Conversations with Uncrowned Community Builders. This program brings you the inspiring and sometimes little-known stories of the women and men who have made or are making a difference in our community through their contributions and accomplishments in the arts, business, healthcare, education, politics, media, advocacy, and so much more. Each week, we have the pleasure of talking to another person of accomplishment and contribution. Accomplishment because of all they have done in thought, word, and deed, and contribution because of all they've given back to the community. An uncrowned community builder because we have not properly recognized, celebrated, and commended these individuals for a life that exemplifies the unspoken gift they represent. There are few people who can be recognized by their first name only. Cher, Beyonce, Madonna, Prince, Brandy are just a few. But I'm sure if I mentioned today's guest just by her first name, Karima, most of you would know immediately who I was talking about and instinctively think her last name, Amin. Maybe you know her as your or your children's teacher. Maybe you've heard her as she shares stories of our heritage, culture, and history. Or maybe you've listened to her and swayed during her performances as a musician. Perhaps you've read one of her books or newspaper articles. Or maybe she's motivated you or someone you know to activism by her stance on prison reform. Karima, a well-known figure in our community, and as you can see from this introduction, a busy woman. And I may have missed something in this introduction, but today we're lucky to have her on the program. And since we have a lot to talk about, we're going to get started right away. Karima.
Oh, hello, and I'm happy to be here.
Oh, welcome. You know,
Thank you.
in the beginning of this introduction that I have of you, because you just have done so much, Karima, and I just had to put everything in because we may not get it in the program today, but
that's fine.
If not,
that's
we'll
fine.
come back. But during that introduction, we were showing photos of your family that you graciously shared with us. So if you can talk to me a little bit about your growing up in Buffalo and about your family.
Sure, I can. I am a Buffalo native, born and bred right here in Western New York, Buffalo, New York. My mother was from South Carolina, Blair, South Carolina, near Columbia, and my dad from Greensboro, North Carolina. My dad was Harvey Eugene Aiken, my mother, Bessie Mabry. I was born in 1947, and I go ahead and say that.
I was going to say, few people.
I go ahead and say it because I'm so delighted to still be here.
Yes.
I've had a few near-death experiences, and to be able to say, yes, I was born in 1947, soon to be 72 years old.
72 years young.
Yep, 72 years young. I'm happy to say that because a few of good friends and family members didn't make it.
Yeah.
They've transitioned to move on. I've lived in Buffalo all of my life, went to school in Buffalo, number 74, Bennett High School, University of Buffalo, and I love Buffalo. I've got friends who have moved away, left this place, and good for them. But this is home, and I'm real pleased to be here.
Oh, thank you so much. We try to make that connection with our guests, and their community, and so Buffalo being that, but also with our families. We're of a certain age, and you and I share, that period of time. Having parents who were uprooted or uprooted themselves and moved to Buffalo to make life better for their children.
Yes, they did. My mom and dad met here in Buffalo in 1938. My father had older sisters who were already here in Buffalo, had good things to say about Buffalo, and he was anxious to be here. My mother's family is still mostly down south, but she had heard so many good things about Buffalo being a place where she could make a better life, and so she came here, and this is where they met.
Yeah, and that certainly shaped who we are and the experiences that we've had growing up.
No doubt about it. No doubt about it. My father frequently talked about growing up in the South. My mother did too, but not so much. My father did frequently and told stories about growing up in the Jim Crow South. I think they thought and felt that Buffalo would be better, and for them, I guess it was. But they soon found out that Buffalo is the Jim Crow North,
Yes.
okay? It wasn't all that it was cracked up to be, but it was a good place. They met here. They had children here. I have two sisters. One transitioned last year. Elizabeth, we all called her Lizzie. My sister Wendy is still here in Buffalo. And they made a good life here. My dad worked for the Ford Motor Company. And even after the division he worked for closed and was sent to Lorain, Ohio, he commuted. He commuted from the time I was 10 until the year that I got married.
To Lorain, Ohio.
To Lorain, Ohio. He would come home on a Friday night and go back to Ohio on a Sunday afternoon, Sunday evening. And he did that for so many years in an effort to make money to take care of his family. He did look for work when the division of Ford closed for him. And I remember him doing odd jobs. I mean, he was not above washing dishes, driving a cab, driving a truck. He did all kinds of things, but ultimately he had to go back to Ohio.
Yeah.
And
that's so important. I'm glad you shared that, because so very often, certainly when people look at black families, they tend to want to stereotype us as not having fathers who were present, not having fathers who worked, to support their children and who helped their children in any kind of endeavor, whether that was social, religious, educational, and so forth. I had a father like that. You had a father like that.
Yes.
So, and sharing those stories, and certainly with our younger generation, just so critical.
Important. Yeah. Oh yeah, no doubt. My father was very present in my life as a child, but even as an adult. He was very interested in what I was learning in school. He only went to third grade, so the fact that he was able to send 3 daughters to college was a big deal, and we'll always be grateful for that.
Yeah. You talked about your father telling stories, so I'm going to use that as a segue to get into your own storytelling. We've got maybe about a minute before we have to break, so I'm going to ask you to kind of start with your interest, and then we're going to take a break and we'll come back.
Wow, my interest in storytelling, I think maybe it started when I was a child. I like to talk. I like to tell stories, but I was writing stories more often than not, and sometimes I was writing stories about mean things I could do to my sisters, which doesn't sound very good, but I was the older child, and I wanted to be the boss, and in fact, I wanted to be the only child. Didn't work out that way. I had 2 younger sisters, obviously, and sometimes I would write stories of mean things I could do to them to get rid of them so I could have my mother and my father all to myself. So telling stories, writing stories started a long time ago for me, at home and in school. And it's something I've loved and enjoyed for all my life.
And so you started in childhood, and part of that was to write stories. So, how did the writing start? I mean, was it, again, part of school, or just...
That's interesting. I think for me, as an adult, it started when, I know you remember Weta Clapp.
Yes.
She was director of language arts for the city of Buffalo.
I do.
When I was teaching, she encouraged me to attend professional conferences in the area and outside of the area. I don't know that I would have done it without her encouraging me. I won't say forcing me, but encouraging me to get involved on a local and national level.
Okay. So I'm going to stop you right there because we need to take a break.
Sure.
But when we come back with Karima Amin, we're going to talk more about storytelling.
Yes.
Stay tuned, please.
Save a place for me. Save a space for me. In your heart. In your heart.
Every year, the United Negro College Fund helps thousands of students go to college. But for everyone we help, there's one we can't. Please support the United Negro College Fund. A mind is a terrible thing to waste.
Hi, I'm Barbara Sills Nevergold, and this is They've Got Stories to Tell. And if you're just joining us, too bad, because you missed the first part of my conversation with Karima. We were talking about storytelling and about your entry or your introduction into storytelling. So let's continue with that. Do you, you mentioned...
Well, I mentioned Weta Clapp, who's
yes.
Director of Language Arts for the city schools. I taught in Buffalo for almost 25 years. I resigned at a point, and that's another story altogether, but going to these professional conferences and talking about my work here in Buffalo was sort of my entree. People heard me, they liked hearing me talk, and I met a woman, in fact, who lived in Arkansas, Barbara Stanford.
Close.
Barbara Stanford, okay. All right, and Barbara had written a book. It was called Negro Literature for High School Students. And she was interested in revamping that book and bringing it up to date, and it was going to be Black literature for high school students. And she approached me about co-authoring a book. I hadn't thought about writing a professional book, a textbook or anything like that, and I told her no. The very next year, I got sick and I couldn't return to my job in the schools, and she contacted me and said, would you like to do it? Kind of think about it, and I did, and I had time, and I hated being idle. I wasn't that sick that I couldn't do something, and I said, okay, let's do this. And we did it. In a year, we got that book redone, Black Literature for High School Students. I enjoyed writing it. I enjoyed talking about Buffalo, my work in Buffalo, and that's really where the storytelling started, because I realized a lot of the stories that I was reading to my students, I knew those stories. I didn't have to read them. I could just tell them. Okay. Hadn't thought about that very much, but I realized I could do it, and that's really where it started.
Now, you have an organization that, did you initiate the storytellers?
I'm co-founder.
Black storytellers?
Co-founder with a good friend, Sharon Jordan Holly, public librarian, now retired, as I am too, now retired. But she liked the book that I had done, and we thought about the work that we do as storytellers. In fact, she and I are co-founders of an organization that was created in 1984, Spin a Story Tellers of Western New York. And that happened because she and I were both invited to be part of an event called Storytelling for Peace. She told a story at this event, was at a church downtown. I told a story, and with these other women in the group, we co-founded Spin a Story Tellers of Western New York.
And this was in...
That was in 1984.
So you were well ahead of the curve on this, because now, you know, I see a lot of storytellers and storyteller groups around, but this was long before that
Long before. And Sharon and I realized something as we were doing our work. Oftentimes, people from other cultures didn't really understand Black stories. They didn't recognize or understand why we would be so invested in proverbs and wise sayings and our own stories. We have our stories. And so Sharon and I decided to create something called Tradition Keepers, Black Storytellers of Western New York. And as the co-founders, we invited friends of ours who were also into storytelling or had an interest in storytelling. And so the organization has grown. There are about 25 members at this point. We're encouraging young people to join us.
That's so important.
Oh,
it's
absolutely.
so important to pass on that tradition and to pass on that knowledge.
That knowledge. It's all about education, culture. It presents our worldview today and yesterday. It presents our goals, our aspirations, things we've been through, things we're going through, a look at what we might have to go through, looking at the past in order to understand where we are now and where we have to go in the future. And that's where Tradition Keepers began. That was 1995.
My goodness. That's almost, over 20 years ago.
Yeah.
And, you know, I would say that you mentioned the connection with the education and with the history, but also the connection with writing. And young people are not, it's encouraged to write as they should be, or if they are, to find topics that are of interest to them so that it keeps them engaged and involved. And the writing, takes research. It
Sure
takes,
does.
grammar. It's not just okay, I'm going to,
Yeah.
put something on paper.
It used to make me so angry when a teacher would assign writing something over and over and over and over again as punishment, because that is a turnoff to a lot of young people. I will not do this, I will not do this, I will not do whatever it is over and over and over again. Perhaps it ingrains in the brain or something, but it also turns children off to writing. But when they're invited to write about things they love, things they care about, things they hope to do, things they want to be, that's the kind of writing that really interests me, and the kind of writing that I encourage when I do writing workshops. The opportunity to write, to put something down on paper, or to even get it on the computer is a good thing.
And so the storytelling that you began locally and nationally, you are still doing, and you are doing it actually throughout the country.
I am. Sharon and I and others now are part of the National Association of Black Storytellers. And when people say Black storytellers, what is that? It's about our history, our traditions, our culture. And it's important that we promote that we elevate that we share that, and certainly with our young people. So it's something that I'm invested in. It's something that I believe in. It's something that I love. I don't know if you're aware of the fact that there have been commissions, federal commissions, to promote the English impress in the Western Hemisphere, the Spanish influence in the Western Hemisphere. An event is coming up, and a commission, hopefully, is going to pass in the federal segment of our government to promote 400 years of enslavement of Africans in America. I know that our Buffalo-Erie County Public Library is going to take the lead in developing ideas and programs to highlight the atrocities as well as the contributions that Black people, African people, have made to this nation and to the world.
Yes, I'm aware of that, and I'm very excited about the fact that next year many of us will be working with the library to promote and to actually develop an exhibit that is going to be culturally relevant and that's going to speak to us and to our history, as we know it and as we've learned it. Well, actually, we haven't learned it. That's the problem.
Well,
not within the school system.
No, and I said this to someone yesterday. Black history comes and goes, and people should welcome it as an opportunity to learn something new. That's not happening. So wherever I'm invited to speak or write or say something related to our history, I try to promote it all year long, not just the month of February, but when February comes around, learn something new. If I go into a school and the children can only tell me about Martin Luther King and Harriet Tubman, something is wrong. They need to know more than that, and so do they. So do their teachers.
You'll put me on a soapbox when we talk about that's why Uncrowned Queen started.
All right.
So at that juncture, we have to take a break, and we'll be back, however, with Karima Amin, and we'll be talking a little bit more about some of the things that she's doing, and share some of our historical background. So stay tuned, please.
Along with weight loss, it's one of the many ways to fight osteoarthritis pain. For more information on managing pain, go to FightArthritis Pain.
Hi, I'm Barbara Sills Nevergold, and this is They've Got Stories to Tell. Welcome back, or if you're just joining us, we're having a wonderful conversation with Karima that's going all too fast because there's so much that we can talk about and so much we want to get in, so we're going to have you back for a second show.
I'll gladly return.
Because I won't spring this on you, but as we were talking, I thought I should have asked her to tell a story while we're on here. So when you come back, you can prepare a story to tell, and I think that would be wonderful. So let's segue a little bit, though, into something else that I think, again, is historically rich and shows your creativity and your commitment to our culture and our history. And that is your work with the Daughters of Creative Sound.
Oh, I love the work with the Daughters of Creative Sound. I wanted to play djembe drum forever. I would go to events at the African Cultural Center here in Buffalo, or events where they were doing something for something special, another organization. But I love the drum. I love the drum. I wanted to play the drum. I couldn't find anybody to teach me. There are lots of drummers here in Buffalo. And going back a few years, I have to say, and this is the truth, somebody I know out there I know can back me up. A lot of the men who come to Buffalo from African nations oftentimes come from countries where the women don't play djembe. They might play the small sakara drum. It's about the size of a dinner plate. Or they'll play a talking drum you hold under your arm and hit with a stick. But I wasn't interested in sakara. I wasn't interested in the talking drum. I wanted to play djembe. I went to an event where I was invited to speak, a wedding at the Langston Youth Center, and I was asked to tell a story. There was a woman there playing djembe, an African-American woman playing djembe. I got so excited. That was Mary Alice Boyd. There are people out there who know Mary Alice.
Yes, I know Mary
And
Alice.
she looked so beautiful. She was dressed in blue. She was playing djembe. She looked like an angel. I told my story. She played her drum. And at the end of the wedding, just before the reception, I asked her if she would teach me how to play. And she told me that she was being treated for cancer. And she'd already been told that there would be a while where she might not be able to play at all. And she didn't know about teaching me, but she told me to contact her in the spring. This was October of one year. I didn't ask anybody else. I just prayed for her. And when springtime rolled around, 2004, I called her. I asked her how she was doing, and she said, "I'm so glad you called me now. The doctor has just given me compression sleeves that I can wear so I can play the drum a little bit." And she said, "Come to my house, and I can give you 15 minutes. I don't think I can do any more than that." And so I went to her house on a Wednesday and worked with her for 15 minutes. And I worked with her for a whole bunch of Wednesdays for 15 minutes. And the more I worked with her, the more I wanted to play that drum, the more I learned about that drum. And I shared that with other women that I knew. And Sharon was one of them. She's my good friend. Told her about the djembe. She wasn't interested in djembe, but she plays shakere. And I told a few other women who were interested in drumming and a few others who were interested in playing that shakere. And 2004, end of that year, we had our debut. I'm trying to think where we were. True Bethel Baptist Church. It was one Kwanzaa night, the night that Dr. Maulana Karenga was going to be in Buffalo. He is the creator of Kwanzaa, as you well know.
I know.
And we were so nervous and so excited because we hadn't really played publicly, just at my house. And when we were announced that Daughters of Creative Sound will do 15 minutes or whatever, and as soon as we started playing, Dr. Karenga and his wife walked in. And we got even more nervous, but we're playing, we're playing. And when we were done, he and his wife gave us a standing ovation.
Oh, my.
They stood up, they were clapping, and the wife said, "Play more, play more." And we said, "We don't know anymore." She said, "Well, play it again." And so we did, and we've been playing ever since.
What
at
a
one
wonderful
point,
story. I never heard the story, the full story. And of course, I do know Mary Alice Boyd.
yeah, we
and
lost
so
Mary
her
Alice
legacy.
the
Yes.
very next year, 2005. But she was a wonderful person, a great teacher for all of us.
And I
We
know that
miss
you
her.
carry her legacy with you.
We do, and we
and you honor
sometimes
that.
we play a rhythm. We call it Nia's theme. We call her Nia, which of course is one of the 7 principles of the Nguzo Saba. Nia means purpose, and so we call her name. We tell her story. We play the rhythm that she would play when we would do warm-ups before programs, and we call it Nia's theme. And we play that, remember her, and we're so honored to do it. She was really a wonderful person, and
Yes.
you know, she
yes.
got sicker and sicker, and I remember reaching a point where we needed to climb maybe 3 or 4 stairs to get to a stage at a school. She couldn't climb the 3 stairs. We had to help her and take her drum to the stage and take it off the stage. We did whatever we could do, and she is truly missed. Wonderful
I know
person.
Peggy spent a lot of time with her toward the end, and so we do have fond memories, and I recall her from church and all. That's a wonderful story. I hope that, you know, as you combine, I know you combine the music and the storytelling, that maybe you do have a story that you've written regarding Nia.
Actually, I haven't. I talk about her all the time, but I haven't written anything about her. But I could, and maybe I should.
I can plant that. Maybe I can plant that in a seed.
That's a great idea
today.
That's a great idea,
and that would be wonderful. I mean, there's so much that you have done with the women in the storytelling, the women in the musical group. And I know that you're in great demand, because
that's something. They still want me? Oh, wow. Oh, it's been a long time. 40 years of telling stories and playing a drum and teaching. I'm retired, but still teaching. And
once a teacher, always a teacher.
Always,
isn't that
and
so?
loving every minute of it.
And you know what? I know you're going to have to come back, because like so many of the women who are on our Uncrowned Queens, Uncrowned Community Builders now webpage, you have in your lifetime done so many things, you know, in terms of your education, in terms of your writing, in terms of your community engagement, community involvement, and one of the major areas I know that you're touching on now has to do with prison reforms, and prisoners are people too.
Yes.
And we just don't have time to talk about that today, because
I have to come back.
Because it takes more time, but it illustrates and you know, to our viewers, and reason why I love doing this program is that we have so many uncrowned community builders like yourself who work selflessly for this community. And you started out by saying how much you love this community.
I do.
And so
indeed.
I'm going to ask you again to, you know, put us on your schedule to come back. We'll talk about prisoners are people too first. We didn't even talk about Brer Rabbit.
No, we didn't. But
we're going to have you tell a story.
Okay, make
so
a
get
list.
ready.
Make a
Make a list. Okay.
And I will comply. Not a problem. I want to.
Thank you. So this has been They've Got Stories to Tell, Conversations with Uncrowned Community Builders, a program of the Uncrowned Queens Institute. We invite and encourage you to visit our website at www.uncrownedcommunitybuilders to learn more about the lives and the contributions of the uncrowned queens and kings we are spotlighting in this program. You can also watch this program on the UCB YouTube channel at www.youtube.com/uncrownedqueens. And I want to say a special thanks to Jim Heck, the Third, the Romeos, Retired Old Men Eating Out, and Roger and Betsy Struther for their generous support of this program. We look forward to seeing you next time. Thank you.